The grand hall of the Galactic Strategic Institute hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of 100 different languages. The domed auditorium stretched 500 meters across, its curved walls displaying holographic star maps and tactical simulations from 1,000 battles. Alien delegates from 37 species floated, slithered, or strode through the zero-gravity zones, their forms casting strange shadows under the pale blue light of Zentha Fee's reflection. Commander Elias Vance entered through the western archway, his boots clicking against the polished floor. The sound drew glances, some curious, most dismissive. His cybernetic right arm flexed unconsciously as he navigated the crowd, the synthetic muscles whirring softly beneath the flesh-toned polymer skin. Only the faintest metallic sheen betrayed its artificial nature. A group of Vorak diplomats clustered near the central podium, their reptilian scales rippling with amusement. One, a high-ranking marshal by the gold sigils on his chest plates, turned his wedge-shaped head toward Vance. "Ah," Krax hissed, his forked tongue flicking out. "The human finally arrives. We were beginning to think your kind had forgotten how to tell time." Vance didn't flinch. "Traffic was hell," he said, deadpan. Laughter erupted from a nearby contingent of Zephyrians, their crystalline bodies refracting the light into prismatic bursts. "Typical mammalian excuse," chirped their lead delegate, a tall being whose facets gleamed with condescension. "Always blaming external factors for your shortcomings." Vance ignored them, moving toward the human delegation's designated area, a small, isolated platform near the back. The other species had sprawling sections with interactive displays and floating data streams. The human space had 4 chairs and a single holoprojector that flickered intermittently. The chamber's central hologram flared to life, revealing the sigil of the Galactic Council. High Arbiter Vexis, a willowy seraphim with iridescent wings, spread her limbs in a gesture of solemnity. "Delegates," her voice echoed, melodic and cold. "We convene to finalize the participants for the T-Breaker War Games." Murmurs spread through the hall. The Tidebreaker exercises were the most prestigious military simulation in known space, a proving ground for the galaxy's mightiest fleets. Vance's jaw tightened as the list of approved species scrolled through the air. The Vorak were in, the Zephyrians, the Keltari swarm, even the reclusive Drath, who hadn't fought a war in 3 centuries. The human emblem never appeared. A Zephyrian near the front let out a chime, like chuckle. "Oh dear, did someone forget to submit your application?" Vance kept his voice level. "Council of Exis, there seems to be an oversight." The Seraphim's wings twitched. "No oversight, Commander. The Council voted unanimously. Humanity lacks the temperament for large-scale void combat." Krax's laughter was a deep, rattling sound. "Your ships are slow, your weapons are primitive, and your crews." He leaned forward, his slit pupils dilating. "Too emotional. War is not a game of feelings." Vance's cybernetic fingers curled into a fist. "We've fought in every conflict the Council has sanctioned for the past 50 years. Our record speaks for itself. Against pirates, against rebels." A Zephyrian delegate waved a translucent hand, "Not against real militaries." The hologram shifted, displaying past T-Breaker victors, the Vorak's plasma barrages, the Zephyrians' precision strikes, the Keltaris swarm tactics. Not a single human ship featured in the highlights. Vance exhaled slowly. "You're making a mistake." Vex's wings folded behind her. "The decision is final, perhaps in another decade, if your species demonstrates—" "Let me guess," Vance cut her off. "Better discipline, more obedience to Council doctrine." A hush fell over the chamber. No one interrupted a seraphim. Vex's bioluminescent veins pulsed. "Your insolence proves our point. Commander, humans are unpredictable, volatile. You do not follow the rules of war." Vance smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "That's not a bug, Counselor. It's a feature." Krax snorted. Brave words for a species whose greatest warship couldn't scratch the paint on a Vorak dreadnought. The other delegates murmured agreement. A Keltari swarm representative clicked its mandibles. Perhaps the humans should stick to planetary defense, leave the real fighting to those with thicker hides. Vance looked around the chamber, at the smug Vorak, the condescending Zepyrians, the indifferent Seraphim. His cybernetic arm hummed as he activated its internal comlink. A single encrypted pulse shot toward Mars. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the railing. "Tell me, Marshal Krax, how much do you value your pride?" The reptilian alien blinked. "What?" Vance's voice carried across the silent hall. "A wager, your best ship against one of ours, live fire, no simulations." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Tidebreaker games were carefully controlled. No actual weapons, no real casualties. Krax's tongue flicked out again. "You're bluffing." "Test me." The Zepyrian delegate's facets darkened. "This is insanity." The council would never. Vexis raised a slender hand. "Actually," she said, her voice dripping with curiosity, "the council would be fascinated to observe such an exercise." Krax's scales rippled in a predatory grin. "Very well, human. Let's see how long your ship lasts against the Bloodclaw." Vance didn't blink. 1 hour. Until you surrender. Until your dreadnought is space dust. The chamber erupted, and in the chaos, no one noticed the faint glow of Vance's cybernetic palm, where a single pulsing light winked in sync with a signal now racing across the void toward Drydock Faya. The Grand Hall's massive doors hissed shut behind Commander Elias Vance as he stepped into the private meeting chamber. The circular room was dark, lit only by the pale blue glow of the floating holotable at its center. Shadows clung to the walls like living things, and the air carried the faint metallic tang of recycled atmosphere. Vance's boots clicked against the polished floor as he approached the table. His cybernetic right hand flexed unconsciously, a habit he'd developed after the injury on Proxima. Across from him, Vorak High Marshal Krax loomed, his reptilian bulk casting a jagged shadow across the star map projected between them. Krax's armored scales shimmered under the blue light, shifting between deep crimson and burnt umber as he breathed. "You humans," Krax rumbled, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air, "always so eager to prove yourselves." His clawed fingers tapped against the table, each impact making the holographic stars tremble. "Your fleet is a joke. One Vorak dreadnought could erase your entire navy before your primitive targeting systems even locked on." Vance didn't blink. He'd faced down worse than Krax in the Martian trenches. "Then let's test that theory," he said, his voice calm. "A live fire exercise. Your best ship against one of ours." Krax's laughter sounded like rocks grinding together. The Vorak delegation behind him joined in, their hissing chuckles filling the chamber. "You would pit your floating tin can against the Bloodclaw?" Krax leaned forward, his slit pupils dilating. "I'll enjoy watching your crew suffocate in vacuum when we crack your hull open." The door slid open again, admitting the Zepyrian envoy, the crystalline being moved with unnatural smoothness, its faceted body refracting the blue light into prismatic patterns across the walls. "The Council has approved your amusing challenge," it said, its voice like glass chimes. "But we insist on real weapons, no simulations. If humanity wishes to play with the great powers, let them do so without safety nets." Vance kept his face neutral, though his pulse quickened. This was exactly what he'd wanted. "Agreed," he said. "But I want full sensor logs from both ships released to the Council afterward." Krax's tail twitched in amusement. "So the galaxy can see your humiliation in detail by all means." He turned to the Zepyrian. "Tell the Bloodclaw to prepare for target practice." As the aliens moved toward the door, the smallest member of the Vorak delegation lingered. A young officer, his scales still dull with youth. "Commander," he said quietly, "you don't have to do this. Withdraw now, and perhaps the Marshal will spare your ship." Vance met the young Vorak's gaze. "What is your name, son?" "Sub-Commander Trell." the alien answered, his crest flattening slightly. Trell, Vance said, when this is over, I want you to remember something. He tapped his temple with his cybernetic fingers. Humans don't fight fair. We don't fight by your rules, and we never ever fight just to prove we can. He turned back to the star map, where a blinking icon marked the proposed engagement zone. We fight to win. The chamber doors closed behind the departing aliens, leaving Vance alone with the holographic stars. He opened a secure channel to Mars. Zhao, it is on, prep the retribution and activate the Gorgon protocol. Captain Lian Zhao's voice crackled through the implant in his jaw. They took the bait. Like starving fish, Vance said. A smile tugged at the scar on his cheek. Cracks even agreed to real weapons. A pause, then Zhao's voice came through, tight with anticipation. I'll wake up the AI. Let's show these lizards why humans don't play war games. Vance closed the connection. Outside the chamber's observation window, the gas giant Zentha Fey loomed, its swirling storms a maelstrom of reds and oranges. Somewhere in that vastness, the Vorik dreadnought Bloodclaw was powering up its plasma lances, its crew laughing at the foolish humans who thought they could stand against a real warship. Let them laugh, Vance thought. By this time tomorrow, the entire galaxy would learn the truth about humanity, not through speeches or treaties, but through fire and void. He straightened his uniform and walked toward the door. The Council would be watching. The entire Federation would be watching. And for the first time in centuries, they would see what happened when humanity stopped holding back. The chamber doors hissed open, revealing the crowded corridor beyond. Alien delegates from a dozen species turned to stare as Vance emerged. Whispers followed him like a wake as he strode toward the docking bay. Look at him, a Threxian murmured to its companion, walking to his death with such pride. Vance didn't slow. Let them whisper. Soon enough, they'd all be screaming. The dry dock hummed with the low-frequency vibration of magnetic clamps releasing. Commander Elias Vance floated through the zero-gravity approach tube, his boots clicking onto the Retribution's hull, plating with magnetic finality. Behind him, the Zephyrian envoy's crystalline form refracted the dim dock lights into prismatic shards across the black metal. Your vessel is smaller than expected, the envoy said, his voice like glass scraping stone. Vance didn't turn. Size isn't everything. Inside the airlock, Captain Lian Zhao waited with her arms crossed. Her uniform bore no insignia, no rank markings, just the dull grey of the United Earth Space Navy. She nodded to Vance before eyeing the Zephyrian. Welcome aboard the Retribution. The envoy's faceted eyes swept the corridor. No spinal mount. No plasma batteries. He tapped the bulkhead with a sharp appendage. This hull composition is primitive, carbon-steel alloy. Engineer Rafiq Hassan emerged from a service hatch, grease smeared across his dark skin. He was missing the pinky and ring finger on his left hand, a souvenir from the Europa reactor incident. Actually, he said, wiping his palms on his jumpsuit, it is a layered graphene, ceramic weave, self-repairing at the molecular level. The Zephyrian emitted a high-pitched chime, his species equivalent of a scoff, a defensive measure. Where are your weapons? Zhao exchanged a glance with Vance. Show him the forward array. Hassan led them down the central corridor, past crew members who moved with quiet precision. The ship felt alive, not with the chaotic energy of a Vorak warship, but with the focused hum of a predator coiled to strike. The forward observation deck revealed a panoramic view of dry dock operations. Mars hung in the distance, its rust-colored surface scarred by the skeletal remains of old shipyards. Behold, Hassan said, gesturing to the empty space beyond the viewport. Our primary weapons system. The Zephyrian's crystalline facets dulled in confusion. This is a joke. Vance stepped forward. Humanity's first space battles were fought with rocks and kinetic slugs. We've always believed the simplest solution is often the best. He tapped a control panel, activate demonstration mode. Outside, a series of small hatches slid open along the Retribution's hull. Dozens of unmarked projectiles ejected. each no larger than a human fist. Micro-missiles. The Zephyrian's voice dripped with disdain. These couldn't penetrate a shuttle's shields. Hassan grinned. Watch. The projectiles ignited, streaking toward a derelict freighter anchored a kilometer away. At the last second, they changed course, not with thrusters, but by altering their shape, flattening into razor-edged discs that sheared through the freighter's hull in perfect synchronization. The Zephyrian's light patterns flickered erratically. Impossible. No guidance system is that precise. Zhao leaned against the viewport. They're not guided, they're linked. Each one communicates with the others via quantum entanglement, a swarm intelligence. Vance crossed his arms. And that is just the distraction. Deep in the ship's core, something awakened. The deck plates vibrated as the Retribution's true systems came online. Hassan's remaining fingers danced across a holopad, bringing the Gorgon to stand by. Alien sensors would have detected nothing. No energy spikes, no weapon signatures, but the crew felt it. The ship breathing around them. The Zephyrian envoy took an involuntary step back. What is that? Hassan's smile didn't reach his eyes. The reason we don't need big guns. Zhao motioned toward the exit. Let's discuss the exercise parameters. The Vorak will be expecting a traditional slugfest. As they left the observation deck, the Zephyrian lingered, his crystalline body reflecting the dying light of the shredded freighter. For the first time in his diplomatic career, he felt something unfamiliar. Dread. Back in the corridor, Hassan whispered to Zhao, "They still don't see the real weapons." She glanced at the bulkhead, where the ship's AI interfaces lay hidden beneath unmarked panels. Good. Let's keep it that way until the dance begins. Vance checked his chrono. 24 hours until rendezvous. Get some rest. None of them would sleep. The ship wouldn't allow it. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Retribution waited and learned. The Bloodclaw emerged from warp space with a thunderous ripple of displaced energy, its massive reptilian hull casting a shadow across the asteroid field. On the bridge, High Marshal Krax lounged in his command throne, his scaled fingers drumming against the armrest. His tactical display showed the human ship, the Retribution, huddled behind a jagged rock, barely half the size of one of the Bloodclaw's plasma batteries. Pathetic, Krax rumbled, his forked tongue flicking out in amusement. They hide like prey. His weapons officer, a younger Vorak with fresh battle markings, chuckled. Shall we flush them out, High Marshal? Krax waved a clawed hand. Fire a warning shot. Let them see what real firepower looks like. The Bloodclaw's primary cannon hummed to life, its coils glowing crimson as it charged. With a deafening roar, a lance of superheated plasma streaked across the void, vaporizing the asteroid beside the Retribution in a flash of molten debris. On the Retribution's bridge, Captain Lian Zhao didn't flinch. The impact rattled the hull, but her eyes remained locked on the tactical feed. "They're predictable," she murmured. Engineer Rafiq Hassan, standing at her shoulder, grinned, just like the simulations. Zhao tapped a command into her console. Initiate Gorgon protocol. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Retribution's black hull shivered. On the Bloodclaw's bridge, Krax's amusement faded as his sensors screamed, "High Marshal, the human ship, it's changing." The Retribution's smooth surface fractured like liquid metal, thousands of hexagonal plates shifting and realigning. Micro-thrusters flared along its length, adjusting its profile in real time. What had been a rigid cruiser now moved like a living thing, its form flowing around the next plasma blast, as if it had anticipated the shot before it was even fired. Krax snarled. Focus fire, all batteries full barrage. The Bloodclaw unleashed hell. Plasma cannons, ion lances, and kinetic slugs filled the space between the ships, a storm of destruction that would have annihilated any other vessel in the galaxy. But the Retribution danced, its adaptive armor twisted plates sliding to absorb impacts at the last possible moment. Thrusters fired in precise bursts, nudging it just out of the way of incoming fire. It wasn't dodging, It was predicting. Zhao's fingers flew across her console. They're using standard Vorak firing patterns, exactly as we expected. Hassan laughed. They really don't innovate, do they? A new alert blared on the Blood Claws bridge. Cracks whirled toward his sensor officer. Rear port. The Vorak scales paled. The human ship. It's analyzing our tactics. It's adapting to our patterns faster than we can adjust. Crack's claws dug into his throne. Impossible. No AI is that fast. On the Retribution, Zhao leaned back in her chair, watching the Blood Claw's frantic adjustments play out on her screen. They still don't get it, she said. It's not just the AI. Hassan nodded. It's us. The Retribution systems weren't just learning, they were thinking. Every move the Blood Claw made was referenced against centuries of Vorak military doctrine. Every adjustment weighed against the psychological profiles of Cracks and his officers. The ship wasn't just reacting, it was hunting. Zhao opened a channel to the Blood Claw. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. I Marshal Cracks. You've studied our ships, our weapons, but you never studied us. Crack's roar of fury was cut off as the Retribution surged forward, slipping between two plasma volleys with eerie precision. Its hull plates rippled again, forming a razor-edged prow aimed straight at the Blood Claw's bridge. The Vorak tactical officer screamed. They're coming right at us. Crack's final order was lost in the chaos as the Retribution struck, not with guns, not with missiles, but with the sheer terrifying force of a predator that had finally closed in for the kill. The Blood Claw's bridge was chaos. Warning klaxons wailed as the massive dreadnought's targeting systems struggled to lock onto the black shadow dancing between asteroids. Cracks gripped the command rail, his scaled fingers leaving grooves in the metal. Again, he roared. Fire again. Plasma cannons discharged in deafening pulses, carving molten gashes through the rocks where the Retribution had been seconds before. The human ship moved like nothing Cracks had ever seen, not banking or rolling like a proper warship, but flowing, its entire structure shifting mid-maneuver as if made of liquid. High Marshal, the sensor officer screeched, his frill flaring crimson with panic. Their energy signature. It is changing, adapting to our weapon frequencies. Cracks whirled on the trembling technician. Impossible. No species can recalibrate shielding that fast. On the main display, the Retribution executed an impossible turn, its angular momentum defying physics as it skimmed along the Blood Claw's starboard flank. For a terrifying moment, Cracks saw his own reflection in the human ship's pitch, black hull. Then it was gone, vanishing behind another asteroid. Captain Zhao's voice crackled over the comm, calm as a professor giving a lecture. Vorak Tactical Doctrine, Volume Fei, Chapter Fei. You always lead your target by Fei degrees when firing plasma in asteroid fields. Predictable. Cracks's blood ran cold. That was from his personal training manual classified. The weapons officer suddenly gasped. They're mirroring our shield harmonics. Our next volley won't. The Retribution struck first. A pinpoint lance of violet energy speared through the Blood Claw's forward deflectors, slicing clean through 3 decks before Cracks's crew could reroute power. Damage reports flooded the tactical displays as entire sections vented atmosphere. Return fire, all batteries. Cracks bellowed, but the human ship was already moving again, its black form splitting the void between the Blood Claw's turret arcs with surgical precision. Cracks watched in horror as his gunners' shots passed harmlessly through empty space where the Retribution had been, and where it would be, according to every standard Vorak firing solution. High Marshal, comms hissed. We're receiving a data packet from the human vessel. It is your Academy thesis. Your personal notes on fleet engagements at the Battle of Zenthar Rift. Cracks's claws extended involuntarily. That thesis had never left the Vorak High Command archives, yet there it was on screen, annotated in human script with notes like predictable flanking pattern, and repeats this faint fey of time when outnumbered. The Retribution's engines flared as it executed a perfect Immelmann turn no ship that size should have been capable of, coming about directly into the Bloodclaw's blind spot. Krax's tactical display lit up with hundreds of new threat markers as the human vessel's hull rippled. Thousands of micro-thrusters, aligning like the scales of some ancient predator. "Evasive maneuvers," Krax screamed too late. The Retribution fired again, not with energy weapons, but with a swarm of projectiles that twisted mid-flight, each one adjusting trajectory based on the Bloodclaw's desperate attempts to dodge. They struck with terrifying precision, not targeting weapons or engines, but the vulnerable junctions between armor plates. Alarms howled as the dreadnought's portside maneuvering thrusters failed. The massive ship began an uncontrolled roll, its artificial gravity struggling to compensate. Krax clung to his command chair as crew members tumbled across the deck. Zhao's voice came through the chaos, quieter now, almost pitying. "You study fleets, we study enemies." The main display flickered, then showed something that made Krax's heart stop. A hologram of himself as a young cadet, barely scaled, running war simulations in the Vorak Military Academy. The footage was ancient, grainy, and unmistakably from his personal records. "How?" Krax whispered. The Retribution's AI reconstructed the simulation in real time, overlaying Krax's childhood tactics with his current maneuvers. The match was perfect. Every decision, every feint. It was all there, predicted decades in advance by his own younger self. "Your mistake," Zhao said as her ship positioned for the killing blow, "was thinking war is about ships and guns. It is about people, and we've been studying you for a very long time." Krax's comm officer suddenly shouted, "Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. They're ordering a ceasefire." The Retribution froze in space, hanging motionless just kilometers from the crippled Bloodclaw. For several heartbeats, the only sound on the bridge was the ragged breathing of Krax's crew. Then Zhao's voice came one last time, so soft Krax almost missed it. "Tell your council we accept their surrender." The channel closed. On the view screen, the black ship pivoted gracefully and accelerated away, leaving the mighty Vorak dreadnought drifting helplessly among the asteroids. Krax slowly released his death grip on the command rail, staring at the claw marks he'd left behind. His second in command approached cautiously. "Hi, Marshal. What do we report?" Krax didn't answer immediately. He kept staring at the tactical display, where the last frames of his childhood simulation still flickered, a younger version of himself making the exact same mistakes that had just doomed his ship. "Tell them," Krax said at last, his voice hollow, "that we finally found the answer to their question." He turned to face his crew, seeing the same dawning horror in their eyes that he felt in his own hearts. "What makes humans so dangerous? They don't fight the way we do, they fight the way we don't." The Bloodclaw's bridge trembled as another volley of plasma fire missed its target. Krax gripped the command console, his claws leaving deep grooves in the metal. "Again!" he roared. "Target that damn shadow and erase it from the stars." His weapons officer, a younger Vorak named Vex, hesitated. "Hi, Marshal. Our targeting systems can't lock onto it. The human ship moves like nothing we've ever seen." Krax finished, his voice a low growl. On the view screen, the US and Retribution flowed between asteroids, its black hull rippling like liquid. It had no fixed shape, one moment a dagger, the next a crescent, always shifting, always evading. The Bloodclaw's massive spinal cannon charged again, its hum vibrating through the deck plates. "Fire!" Krax commanded. The beam lanced out, carving through space where the Retribution had been a second before. But the human ship was already gone, twisting into an impossible angle no Vorak pilot would ever attempt. Captain Lian Zhao's voice crackled over the comms. "You're predictable, Krax. You always lead with the spinal cannon. Always." Krax snarled. "You hide like cowards, face us in open battle." A pause, then Zhao's voice again, calm, almost amused. "Open battle? You mean your kind of battle? No thanks." The Retribution suddenly accelerated, not away, but toward the Bloodclaw. Vex's eyes widened. They're coming right at us." Krax bared his teeth. Finally, gunners, full barrage, wiped them out. The Bloodclaw's plasma batteries unleashed a storm of fire, filling space with deadly light. But the Retribution didn't dodge this time. It changed. Its hull plates shifted, forming a concave shield just as the plasma bolts struck. Instead of detonating, the energy rippled across the surface, absorbed, redirected. Engineer Afiq Hassan's voice came through the comms, laughing. "You guys really like throwing energy around, huh? Let me show you what we do with it." The Retribution's entire surface pulsed once, then fired the absorbed plasma back at the Bloodclaw, amplified. Alarms shrieked as the redirected bolts slammed into the dreadnought's shields. Krax staggered as the deck bucked beneath him. "Shields at Faye!" Vex shouted. Krax's scales darkened with fury. "Ina, all power to forward shields. Ram them if we have to." The Bloodclaw surged forward, its massive bulk cutting through space like a blade. The Retribution didn't flee. It held position, waiting. Zhao's voice was a whisper over the comms. "Gorgon Protocol, final phase." Then the Retribution moved. Not away, not sideways. Straight at them. Krax's breath caught. "They're ramming us." The Retribution's adaptive armor locked into a single, unbreakable configuration, a spearhead of black alloy, reinforced by the same kinetic shields that had deflected the Bloodclaw's fire. It hit Fei lightspeed in less than a second. Vex screamed, "Brace 4." The impact was silent in the void of space, but on the Bloodclaw's bridge, it was an earthquake. The Retribution's prow smashed through the dreadnought's forward shields like glass, then punched straight into the bridge. Krax had one last glimpse of the view screen. The Retribution's black hull filling his vision, unstoppable, inevitable. Before the world exploded, metal screamed. Consoles erupted in sparks. The deck plates heaved, throwing Vorak crew in all directions. Krax hit the floor hard, his vision swimming. He tried to rise, but the gravity generators were failing. Over the chaos, Zhao's voice cut through. "This isn't war, Krax, not the way you understand it." Krax coughed, blood flecking his scaled lips. "Then what is it?" A pause. Then cold and final. "Efficiency." The comms cut out. The Bloodclaw's systems failed one by one. Life support, engines, weapons. The great dreadnought pride of the Vorak fleet drifted lifeless, its bridge crushed, its crew dead or dying. Outside, the Retribution peeled away, its black hull unmarked, unscathed. Not a single scorch, not a single dent. On what remained of the Bloodclaw's bridge, Krax lay broken, staring at the stars through the shattered view screen. His last thought before the darkness took him was a single searing realization. They were never hiding. They were learning. The chamber was silent, not the quiet of contemplation, but the stillness of shock. The holographic display still flickered with the final moments of the battle. The Retribution's impossible maneuvers, the Bloodclaw's catastrophic failure. Commander Elias Vance stood at the center of the Grand Hall, his cybernetic arm hanging loosely at his side. The alien delegates stared at him, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright terror. The Zephyrian envoy was the first to break the silence. His crystalline form shimmered with agitation as he stepped forward. This is impossible. Your ship had no weapons, no spinal cannons, no plasma batteries. Nothing. Vance didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply tilted his head, as if considering the question for the first time. "Wrong," he said. His voice was calm, almost casual. "It had one weapon." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Vorak delegation, usually so proud, so unshakable, looked as if they'd been gutted. One of their junior officers, a young reptilian with scales still dull from shock, whispered to his superior, "They rammed us." "Who does that?" Captain Lin Zhao's voice crackled over the chamber's comm system, piped in from the Retribution's bridge. "You were expecting a fair fight," she said. "That was your first mistake." The holograms shifted, replaying key moments of the battle. The Retribution's black hull twisting like liquid around the blood claw's plasma fire. The AI's predictive algorithms flashing across the screen, reconstructing Crack's own childhood war simulations. His personal tactics in real time. A Ceralian delegate, their floating orbs pulsing with distress, spoke up. You studied him before the battle." Vance shook his head. "No, during," the chamber erupted. "You mean your ship learned his tactics as you fought?" "Not just his," Zhao corrected. "Every Vorak engagement in the last 2 centuries, every battle report, every after-action scan. We didn't just build a ship, we built a student." The Vorak High Marshal's second in command, a grizzled veteran with scars across his snout, slammed a clawed fist onto the floating table. "That's not war, that's deception," Vance finally smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. No, it's adaptation. The hologram zoomed in on the final moment, the Retribution's kinetic ram, using its own shields as a battering ram. The impact had been perfectly calculated, not enough to destroy the Retribution, but more than enough to crack the Bloodclaw's bridge like an egg. The Zephyrian envoy's crystalline body flickered, his voice trembling. "You risked your own ship, your own crew." Zhao's voice was ice. We knew the math. Silence again. Then from the back of the chamber, a small voice, a young Zenthari scholar, their feather like appendages quivering. This changes everything." Vance turned to face them. "Yes, the Vorak second in command wasn't done. You expect us to believe one human ship can take on an entire fleet?" Vance didn't blink. "No, I expect you to believe." The implications hit like a shockwave. The delegates looked at each other, then back at the holograms, at the Retribution's flawless, unscathed hull. No scorch marks, no damage, just black. The Zephyrian envoy's voice was barely a whisper. "How many of these things do you have?" Vance didn't answer. He didn't need to. The chamber's main display flickered again, this time showing a live feed from Earth's orbital docks. Dozens of black-hulled ships, identical to the Retribution, sitting in silent rows. Waiting, the Vorak officer took a step back. "By the void." Vance finally moved, walking toward the exit. He paused at the door, glancing back over his shoulder. "You wanted to know what makes humans so dangerous." He flexed his cybernetic hand, the servos whirring softly. "We don't fight the war in front of us. We fight the next one." Then he was gone. The delegates stood frozen, staring at the empty space where had been. The holograms still played, looping the Retribution's victory over and over. On the Bloodclaw's final transmission, Crack's voice echoed through the chamber, unfinished, forever cut off. "This isn't war. This is..." The Zephyrian envoy finished for him, his voice hollow, insanity. Captain Zhao's voice, still on comms, was the last thing they heard before the feed cut out. "No," she said. "Victory."